Community Connections, Resources, and Gardening. My name is Quandra Gaines, and I'm your host. Um, we're waiting for our guests. Um, we're going to be talking about different things about the elections, the ballot, until our guest is able to sign on. Okay, so this Thursday was the first day of early voting. I hope that many were able to participate Thursday, but it doesn't end until this Thursday, which is November the 3rd. So, throughout the week, we've been talking about a lot of different things MBE, the participation for African Americans, and um, the injustices that they're receiving. Um, we're going to be talking about a couple things this week on Political Cipher. I hope that you're able to join us on this Wednesday at 7 p.m. So I'm not sure if anyone has been looking at the official ballot, but throughout the week on Black USA News, our publisher, our president of Black USA News, Downey Glover, has been sharing a lot of information about the ballot. And on a Saturday morning, on a fall, beautiful Saturday morning, I thought this would be suiting. If you've been able to look at the different questions, the different amendments, some of them could be confusing, and I advise you to do your research. The first thing that I would like to talk about is question B. It's on the ballot. It's going to be one of those things that you're going to ask for or against. And it is asking for us to either approve, be for that actual bond issues school loan, where they're asking for $38 million to be used for the acquisition of land or property to construct and erect new school buildings, athletic and auxiliary facilities, and for additions and improvements to or modernization or reconstruction of existing school buildings or facilities. To equip all buildings to be constructed, erected, improved, modernized, or reconstructed, and for doing any and all things necessary, proper, or expedient in connection therein. So, after reading that, it made me wonder what happened to the $2.5 million in emergency funds that was supposed to be used to make repairs to the school? Then it made me ask the question of what happened to the $66 million in state funding that was supposed to be used for heating repairs, roof repairs, and building repairs. So with that question, it made me think like, uh, are we being great stewards of money that's being funneled to Baltimore City, or are we not? Okay, so now the weather is changing. Now I've been able to go to a couple schools. Some of them have heat, where others don't. So the question is, if we're going to give $38 million, what's going to change? Is there going to be an inspector general that will be able to oversee the dealings of Baltimore City Public Schools? That's a good question. Then there's a big thing. I'm looking at a lot of these various questions. One is the Dante Barksdale Career Technology Apprenticeship Fund. Dante was phenomenal, don't get me wrong. However, this is great that they want to do this, but the question is, why don't they do it before? Why didn't they do it before? Why did he have to be the person that they'll use because he lost his life? Where so many people are losing their lives now and in the past. So that's something that made me think, of course, I'm going to go for it. But I think sometimes we are a little too late We wait for something to happen disastrous, and then we want to put their name on a building, when these are the times, those times where they should have been empowering him and counseling him or what have you, so that he wouldn't have lost his life, protected him, in my opinion. Then we have the housing loan. Question A, affordable housing loan. As a case manager, I am really looking at this one because there isn't really any affordable housing. I mean, it is in some areas, but a lot of the things that a lot of my clients or most people are with slum landlords. Some landlords who have unsanitary, inhabitable houses that they prey on low income or I'd say disadvantaged individuals, families, particularly mothers with children, fathers with children, seniors, and they've gotten away with it. They've gotten away with it for a very, very long time. So much so it made me think that was there a deal made with the city government that they even exist? So this is going to be interesting about question A for the amount of money that they're asking. Because in my opinion, Housing Authority of Baltimore City, as one of the biggest slumlords ever, the housing conditions that a lot of the residents live in, rat infestation, roaches. There is no transition plan for people who may have not had housing that are going into public housing. There is no case management. There is no supervision. And then at the same time, if you notice, the maintenance crew are incompetent. Now, I'm not saying all, because there are some that are not. But a lot of the conditions, a lot of things that are going on in public housing makes me wonder, does the city really care? I'm looking at Housing Authority of Baltimore City. Does it really exist? I mean, because I noticed that when Reggie was there, it was powerful. It was forceful. It existed. He advocated, and he cared. He cared. He had been in the position for a very long time, and I knew that he cared. Now, it makes me question how is leadership chosen to oversee these type of agencies. At one time, Housing Authority of Baltimore City was considered a service providing organization. Does it really exist now? And if so, what are they doing in the community? I have a client that I've had for a period of time. And we had to get her out of public housing. We had to get her out of one and get her into another because the conditions were so horrendous. I had never seen a rat that was as big as an adult cat. And it wasn't one, it was many. She was in between two houses that lived in some deplorable conditions. So bad that her house was clean, but if she had holes at the bottom of her baseboards where they had chewed through the walls to go through to the other house that was, I guess, considered the food house. It's like 3 or 4 different pest control companies that are actually down into these places, and without proper education, without proper case management to show people how to maintain their homes, to budget, to clean their homes. Sometimes I think we're under the impression that when a person loses their home and they become a resident or occupant of the streets, a lot of those things are not always forgotten. But if I don't know if you've ever lived on the street, I don't know if you ever spent a night on the street, I don't know if you ever worked with anyone who's homeless. There's different things and different things that they do to protect themselves. A lot of times I know when I'm downtown, um, with I have one client that I don't know if she'll ever come back, if she'll ever live in a home. She feels safe downtown. And there are times when I go visit her, and she doesn't always have the most robust, clean smell, but she's a really great person. And you could be taken off guard by the smell, but because I know that that's a protection for her, it protects her from being assaulted and it protects her from being raped. It protects her from a lot of different things. So with question A, my question to Baltimore City government is, how are you going to be able to utilize the money for the affordable housing loans and help those people who do need housing, single mothers, single fathers, grandparents who are raising their grandchildren, great grandchildren? How will this money, this is a question for me because I'm actually going to be voting next week. How will this help the people who need it? Will this money be going into great neighborhoods, or will this money be going into neighborhoods who need the housing? Who, for example, in East Baltimore, there's one side of housing that are houses, and then there's depleted housing, where communities have been creative and painted them so they don't look like an eyesore. So my question is, will this housing be used for families? And what do you consider affordable? Most people who are working, if you're not salary, are barely making what, 14, 16, $18 an hour. Will these houses be accommodating to them? Will these houses have an opportunity for mod living, where a person who would be able to come in under one particular income, let's say $15,000, knowing full well that they have to pay gas and electric and all these things, would these houses be a model of housing first? Or would this be a model that would consider mod living, where the person would pay a certain amount of rent? You would work with that person to begin to get their finances in order, their credit, etc., in hopes that they will become a homeowner. Will this money be used? Will these houses be used for that? That's a question that I would love to have answered. The second one for me is question H. Question H is, it's called Baltimore City Police Department. And it's a charter amendment. Are we for it or are we against it? That makes me wonder. Baltimore City has never had its own police department. Baltimore Police Department has all, for a while, a long time, been under the regime of state. So do we have things in place, Mayor Scott and City Council? Do we have things in place where we're able to run our police department that will be headed by the commissioner? Will we hire homegrown police officers rather than going out all the time and paying, in my opinion, incompetent commissioners who we then fire, and then we pay them for the duration of their contract, even though they're fired? That's interesting. For me, that means we're giving someone who was incompetent in the first place We fire him, and then we give him a pat on the back, and we continue to pay him for the terms of his contract. What's going to be different? Will there be sensitivity training for these police officers? Will the police commissioner um, have to do, in my opinion, I think the police commissioner, if he's not from here, I think he should be working with the nonprofits who are working in the communities that are on the front line. I think he should be working with the community associations so that he gets a better feel. This way, when he's doing hiring, a lot of the people will be homegrown because for me, this is just my opinion. And this is what Community Connection Resources Gardening is. It's my opinion. I think that we need to start looking at what we do, how we hire people who don't live in our city. Because in my opinion, they don't always care. They're giving a free ride to a lot of degrees. Um, they're given leeway when if it was a homegrown person, we did. So question H, the competency of the city, its leadership, its governorship over money is concerning to me. Because if we don't have our things in order with school, with the monies, with the leadership of Baltimore City Public Schools, especially North Avenue, they have the worst customer service, the worst phone ethic I've ever seen in my entire life. My children are out of school. I was calling on behalf of someone, and the woman who answered the phone, I would have thought that I had done something to her. She was unprofessional, unethical, and she just didn't want to do her job. Leadership. So we're not able to, if we're not able to, if we're not able to govern our school system, which do we really govern our school system? Do we have ownership of our school system? We need to really, really think about how Baltimore City, which is predominantly an African American city, which has a predominantly African American city council, which has predominantly African American leaders on the state level, on the city level. We need to really, really, really think some things out here. Now, for the new ones who were already zealous before they even came in office, I salute you. But for those who have been in office for so long, it does make me think about term limits. Question K. It does. It really does. However, I think that this question, this amendment, needs to be voted against. The reasoning for it is because the intentions of the organizations and people behind this term, this question. Yes, I do think there should be a limit. But I also think that should be something part of the infrastructure of city council. I think that should be some kind of way of gauging what people are doing, leaders who are voted in office are doing. I think that there should be a component in with the voting in of city council members. I think that there should be a every 6 months to a year report card on the work that that people are supposed to be doing. And then from there, if they're not doing their job, then they should be removed and someone should be put in. That's what I would consider term. One of the things also too with the K, question K, that makes me think about term limits is I would love to know what city council members are on the Comcast board, Xfinity board, because some of the insane charges that Xfinity is doing to the average family is insane. It's insane. Um, it makes me wonder, as leaders in a community, as leaders in city council or state delegation or state senator, are we taking our job seriously for our constituents? The the way that this company has monopolized the city of Baltimore to the point where there's certain areas where you don't even have a choice of saying, oh, I would like to go to Verizon. Oh, you can get Dish TV, but if let's say you wanted to go to another cable company, there are areas that you can't even get. Verizon cannot come in. Is that a equitable market for the consumer, for the voter? Considering that COVID has hit families so hard, have stripped families that were once two family incomes into one. Some people were taken out by COVID, and there's no means of getting that income back. So let's say you have cable and you get the most basic uh, plan. It can run you almost 100 plus 100 to $150. That's insanity. Another thing that makes me wonder, question I, how many people actually knew that we had an advisory board that would appoint and remove the inspector general? How many people knew that? That's a question for me. How many people do that? And then who are the people who choose those people on that advisory board? Does anybody know? Absolutely not. Why is it that not taught in schools? Why is it that civics is not a common language for young people? As young people in elementary school should know what the inspector general does, even if you do it in a game. Most people should know who the police commissioner is. Most people should know who represents them. And yet they don't. Because if you ask most elementary, middle school, and even high school students who their city council is, whose member is, they can't tell you. So why is it that you don't want to be known? Why is it that most people come out when it's election year? You never see them. They don't talk to you. They don't come to your schools unless it's a photo op. Is that good politics in Baltimore? Is that good community? Because I know that there's some that are amazing. District 2, I have to give you applause. When I bought my home, there was a house. There was a house that was just deplorable. They were one of those neighbors that would throw trash in the yard. Um, and they were eyesore, serious eyesore. They did not care, and they told people they did not care. I'll never forget. I picked up the phone. I called my councilwoman. That chief of staff, woo. Those two knocked this thing down. You hear what I'm saying? It got to a point where one of the residents had shot out some people's windows with BB guns. Did you know that those are illegal in Baltimore City? Shot out just because he had an attitude. And come to find out, he was on the news and he had gotten arrested and he's serving time. However, that matter was taken seriously. She didn't know my name. It didn't even matter. They got it done. You hear what I'm saying? The police were involved, all kinds of different things, neighbors and all. But then also that family got help because the case management manager and me helped them connect the dots so that they wouldn't become high profile eyesore for this neighborhood association to go after. That's community. That's community to me. Have you thought of, when you look at your ballot, did you look at all the judges? Do you know them? Do you know who Charles Chuck Bernstein is? Or for Orphans Court? Or Judge Garrett was? Or Michelle Lowenthal? Do you know who these people are? Yet you will choose them. Did you know that Sam Cogan is the only person on, to be sure, to vote for on the ballot? Do you know who the Register of Wills is? How about the clerk of the circuit court? It's important that you read this ballot. It's important that you know that there are questions on here. There's amendments and bond issues asking for public infrastructure, and they're asking for a lot of money. I mean, a lot of money. All these different amendments, all these different charter amendments. Do you actually use this and talk to your friends? Do you call your colleagues? Do you look at this paper, or do you just put it on the side for till the next recycling day? Do you know where the polls are for early voting? Westside Skills Center. That's at 4501 Emerson Avenue. The League for People with Disabilities. That's on Cold Spring. Mount Pleasant. That's my voting call. So, in Ministries on Radicke. Tapsico Elementary, school number 163. The Public Safety Training on Northern Parkway. Southeast Anchor Library when I lived east. That was it was either Tench Tillman or Southeast Anchor. And University of Maryland Engagement Center. It's very important as we get closer and closer, if you're not going to do early voting, it's very important that we educate ourselves. It's very, very important that we know that we have a Baltimore City Board of Elections board. Did you know that? Most people just talk about Armstead, Jones, but did you know that there's an actual City Board of Election board members? And it's 5 of them. Has anybody ever thought of that? Has wondered why certain things are done, why certain things aren't done? Have you ever questioned why only amendments come out and requests for money is always done during elections? Do you know if you have a ballot that is going to be due November the 1st? If you haven't mailed it, do you know where the ballot drop-off boxes are in Baltimore City? There are about 15 locations. That's why this thing is important. Very, very important. Did you know that that Armstead B. Crawley Jones is the senior election director? But did you know that there's a deputy election director? Her name is Abigail Goldman. Have you ever heard her name before? Oftentimes we just say Armstead Jones. So that means there's two people who are not doing their jobs. But community, we need to exercise our voice. We need to share our disappointment. My grandma always told me there is power in the pen. Power in the pen. There's power in standing up, in peaceful marches. Oh, it's power, but it's much more. I mean, you can do that if you want. Power in the pen means you have a paper trail. So that when you reach out to your councilwoman, your councilman, your delegate, your state delegate, your state senator, I don't care if it's your congressman, congresswoman, it is important that you use a communication that has a tracking record. Because if this was truly an eyesore and he was such a bad person, and yes, he does do some really questionable things, especially during elections times, closing down polls, not letting people know, not letting the community know. Of course he does. But why hasn't all of us written up a little letter and given it to the president of the Baltimore City Board of Elections, Bruce Lachansky, or the vice president, Joyce Smith, or the secretary, Arlene Fisher, or the two members, Tamara Purnell or Yvette Matthews? Let this be, I mean, with all the things that have gone on, out here in this world, affecting our children, affecting our seniors, affecting us as workers that go out and make a living, pull an income for our families. Let 2022 let November 8th, Tuesday, November 8th, let all who have running now and who will run another time, that we're tired of miscommunication, lack of leadership, and always asking us for money and amendments and charters and all these things that you can do throughout the year. But you have to get us when it's time, on our one day off, to eradicate things that our leaders are supposed to do for their term. For me, I think that is important as people of the community, African Americans, Latino Americans, all Americans, but specifically African American families. It is about time that we stand up. It is time that we do not keep hearing the same jargon with chicken boxes, music. They'll come in our community and give us music, food, and we'll give a little treat, and then we won't hear them from no more. We need people who are going to stand in the front lines and do the work. It is very important that we vote for question 4, and that is the cannabis. That is the cannabis adult use and possession. That is a constitutional amendment. Question 4. Another thing is educate yourself about the services that are within Baltimore City. For seniors, you need to get on the phone and call Maryland Access Point. You need to make sure you know who is representing you or is supposed to be. You need to find out who who's the director of aging is for Baltimore City. You need to find out what they have available for you. For people who need food and things of that nature, you need to find out all the resources that are out here to help you get that. No longer can we keep being codependent on half-done politicians, half-done leaders. It is time for communities to go back to being the voice that shakes their leaders in their boots. It is about time that people get to the point where if you have to, you can do a carpool and stand out and let them know we are not tolerating you selling off our city, selling off our schools, making us look like we are the poorest city in the world. Stop being invisible to us. If you're invisible to us, then that means you don't need to be in office. If you're not going to be our voice, if you're not going to be our representation, I just advise you to go. I would advise you to leave. It is about time that we stand up and we fight for our communities. We should not have, for me, squeegee boys, I mean, it's a job. And that's because families are not, my opinion, this is my opinion. When a young man has to go out and solicit somebody to wash their windows, for me, that's a good hustle, okay? But for me, if you're going to give them a good hustle, there's so many different vacant car washes that can be opened. And then you can train them how to do detailing, not just windows, detailing, where they can get a nice little income. Train them how to truly wash their car because they'll be able to use the different kinds of machines. Subjecting them and giving them and putting them out on the corner as if there's some kind of what? Lost that they don't mean anything. If you're going to say, let's give these squeezy boys $10, wouldn't it make better sense to get the abandoned car wash and get that going where they can learn how to detail and they can make $45,000, $50,000? Why not incorporate something where they're going to school or they're getting their GED or they're in training or they're in some kind of apprenticeship? Because you're not giving it to them. You're just giving them crumbs. You're giving them crumbs. As a mother, there would be no way in the world you could put my kids on a corner and tell them that they have to wash a window. They weren't raised that way. They don't want crumbs. They want what they're worth. You're not giving them what they're worth. You're just basically putting them in a situation. Because if you're on a strip, if you're not aware, there are different types of meat racks in the city with different people who have different fetishes migrate to. So if there's a person who has a fetish for young boys, wouldn't they migrate to the squeegee boys? Wouldn't they consider them a vulnerable population? Did we think those things out? Did we? Are we protecting them from individuals like that? No, not at all. Not at all. We're not protecting them because we're hoping that they mess up so that we can put them in our on the brand new prisons. So are we really valuing our youth? Are we really placing a high value on them? No, not at all. With all of these apprenticeships that are available, but yet we can keep asking for money. We can ask for money. We want to put names on the rec centers, but we'll have malfunctioning schools. We can build new rec centers, but we'll have schools with no heat. Some teachers that have their own way of separation, of separating children. We have teachers who don't want to teach, that don't know how to teach. Our test scores, the children's test scores, all these different controversies and propaganda about principals changing grades, principals having access to running a school. Now they're supposed to manage and run a school. But when you start putting all these different responsibilities without an overseer, of course there's going to be a whole lot of corruption within schools. Of course it's going to be teachers and principals who feel they need to fudge the numbers or fudge the grade. But is that helping the child? Is it helping the child? Or is it helping future prisons that are going to be built to house those children? Do we really want our children to be successful? Do we really want our children to go through trainings and get their apprenticeships, their electrician apprenticeships, become electrician or plumber or steam fitter or utility or anything like that? Or do we really want to fill out prisons so that the city, the state, and the federal government can get a tax write-off? Are our youth as valuable as we say they are? Do we really care for them? The question for me, I do have a concern, is with this new leadership that's coming in. Will there be programs for opportunities for people to meet the new state's attorney? Will they get to know that he went to Howard and all the different things that he did, all the different experiences and exposures that he had? Will our youth know who our city council members are? Who represents their neighborhood? Or who is their state senator? Who are their delegates? Do they know how many there are? Do they know what district they're in? Parents, we got to do better. Community leaders, we do need to do better. Churches, we need to do better. Because if we have children walking around not knowing what district they're in, not knowing who represents them, not knowing basic life skills to navigate through, how to fill out an application, how to read an application, how to fill out an application, how to take care of their own personal hygiene, how to organize, how to community organize, how to find their voice, what their purpose is. Because right now there are so many youth walking around angry because nobody cares or no one has shown them that they care. And I'm not just telling them that you love them, but guess what? If they're in the community, I'm going to give hypothetically, if they're in the Gallery Park community, they're going to know Mr. David. They're going to definitely know Mr. Eugene. They're going to know Mr. Ernest. They're going to know Miss Allison. Oh, they know Miss Melissa because Melissa cooks. They know PG, Pastor Gary. They know a lot of, and some of them are not in office. They're community. They're going to know Cynthia. They're going to know where to go. They're going to know Leon. They're going to know Rodney. They're going to know where to go to get jobs, to get training, to be signed up for Youth Works, to be signed up for a youth activity, play basketball, whatever. It's something positive. We need to look at them as our future because they are. They are our future. We need to appreciate our seniors. We need to honor them. We need to learn from them. We need to pay homage to them. There are experiences that we have never faced, that they have. And we don't make sure they're in affordable housing. We walk past them like they have no purpose. And for that, I say we need to do better. We do. We need to make sure that they have the things that they need, even if it means going to the store for them, or taking them to the store, or signing out forms so that they can get mobility, or they can get taxi access. We need to do better. We need to bridge this gap between youth and seniors. Because for real, I really think that they're the only ones who can truly, genuinely, unconditionally love on these youth and give them a positive image of themselves. Because unfortunately, we're not doing it. We're not doing it. We need to make getting up and going out to vote the best thing happening. We need to let them know how important voting is. We need to give homage to people who have died, who have lost their lives, who have done things, who have done the sit-ins, who have done the peaceful marches. And why it's important. As Black women, we need to make sure we vote. We definitely do. We are public enemy number one. We have to do 20 times more, 30 times more, whether we have a master's, a bachelor's, a master's, or doctorate, or no degree, but a lot of experience. We need to be taking our children to the voting polls. We need to show them how the process begins, how it starts, how it begins. They need to get that sticker that they voted. It is our responsibility to educate our children about the educational process, about the election process, and about the navigational process of life. That is our role. That is our destiny, and that is our purpose. And if we're not providing our children or giving them their purpose, even if it's their purpose for this duration but letting them know that they come from a family of innovative, passionate, community-driven, intentional, focused individuals. We need to celebrate our Blackness. We need to not apologize for it. There are so many. I have friends from different ethnic groups. And it's amazing. It's amazing to go and be with them and hang out. But they give homage to their seniors. That's their lifeline. That's where they came from. We as Black people need to get back to it. We need to celebrate who we are. And if you don't know who you are, it's okay. It's okay if you don't know. It's okay if you don't know what you want to be. But my advice to you is this. If you don't know, you need to be around people who are going to encourage you to follow what it is. If you're passionate about art, do art. If you're passionate about electronics, engineering, do it. If you're about education, do it. If you're about community activism, community planning, community development, do it. It's important that we, as extended family members, If we do see a squeegee boy, be nice to him. I was in a car with a friend, and this lady basically interrogated this young man. When she left, she didn't realize the imprint, the impact that she played. Sometimes we don't look at the fact of young people out here selling water bottles, selling juices, selling snacks, all those different things. As a community, a family member, did you ask them, did they have a peddler's license? Did you ask them what they wanted to be when they grew up? Did you say an encouraging word? Too often we dehumanize our youth. And then we want to know why they're angry, why they don't believe in the government, why they don't believe their vote matters. We don't believe in seniors. We don't value their history. We don't value their wisdom. We don't give them the placement that they deserve. And yet, Baltimore, we are losing our minds. Things are going on that are out of control. We're not voting. So many people are not going to school. We're finding extended families that don't necessarily fit the norm. And yet, we're still Baltimore. We're still, in my opinion, the greatest city happening. It's just that we, as individuals, as constituents, as voters, as mothers, as fathers, as youth, as community leaders, pastors, deacons, trustees, all that, we need to build our communities. When I was a little girl, my grandma, where she lived, on Saturday morning, she was a nurse, and she was a nurse, but she did hair on Saturday morning, and she did everybody's hair, all the little girls, all the women. She had a shop in the basement of her home. And during that whole interaction, they were communicating with one another. They were building each other up. They were connecting each other with resources and all kinds of things. They were a listening ear to one another. They were a community. No child was left behind. No family was left behind. You didn't have food, you could come down and go in her, get food. And there was a church on Denmore Avenue. And they were a church, phenomenal, small church. But that pastor was on the ball. And you didn't have to go to his church. It was about spreading God's love. And everybody talked to everybody. People just checked in to see how you were doing. And it was a respect for the seniors. So I'm going to give homage to Miss Ann, to Miss Peggy. And there was so many more that looked out for me when I was outside playing and when I wasn't doing what I was supposed to do. Thank you for pulling me up. Thank you for making me feel valued. For Emily Freeman, thank you for being my mama, because I learned a lot from her. Today, on this note, as we begin to decide and we put in our bed for who our governor will be, who our sheriff will be, who our representatives in the court system will be, let the most important thing be present is that we respect and be kind to one another. That we start beginning to look at our block. Look at your block. Look at where you live. And begin to look at all the beautiful assets that are around you. Then you get together and then you begin to make a plan of how you would like your neighborhood to be better. Be that listening ear to someone. I guarantee you it's the best thing happening. We need to learn how to love ourselves, but we also need to learn how to love each other. We are a community. We are Baltimore, Maryland. There is nothing like us. We need to exercise a sense of pride that every other jurisdiction will want to know why our light shines so bright. And the only way that we can do this is if we begin to unify. Because when we begin to unify as constituents, as residents, if we begin to build up our youth, we build up our future. We build up young, innovative minds. We build up extraordinary seniors that I call prime members, because without them, there would not be us. So on this note, I'm going to start the trend. I love you, and you are my community, and you are my Baltimore. You are my Baltimore. And I want Baltimore to not have murders. I want Baltimore to have businesses, more youth programs, more youth leaders. I want people to go to the National Blacks in Wax and it expand and have different locations. I want you to go and see the beauty of all these different jurisdictions within Baltimore: East Baltimore, West Baltimore, Northwest, Southwest, Southeast, Southwest. It is so much beauty in our Baltimore. The only thing we need to do to change things is to unify. So I challenge you. Will you be standing beside me, or will you be criticizing me? If you see the beauty of Baltimore, I challenge you to go out and vote and put people in office that love Baltimore, that see the beauty in Baltimore, and they just want to access, enhance, and rebuild. We can no longer have people in office who are just sitting there to take up space. We don't want you to take up space no more. We want somebody that's on fire. We want somebody on fire that's about change. We somebody in their office who understands what we're going through. It is about time. It is about time. It is 2022. We went through so much during COVID. We've gone through so much with different administrations. It is about time that we say enough is enough. We can no longer accept crumbs. We're from Baltimore. We don't want crumbs. So leaders, if you're ready to give us crumbs, I'm hoping that I'm setting a fire, a light that says we're not taking it anymore. So if you're not doing your job in any of the different federal, state, or local levels, it's time that you leave. Because we're getting ready to unify and we're going to make it so that you're asking us what we want, not you giving us what you think we want. And on that note, I say goodbye.